Hello everyone, in this video we are going to talk about the last chapter of cynical theories called An Alternative to the Ideology of Social Justice. To begin, it is important to understand that when we talk about social justice, we refer to the idea that has postmodernism that is more related with the revenge than the real social justice. So, as we have seen, postmodernism has some questionable ideas. It looked for changing the skills and work out well for people who have been oppressed. That said, postmodernism wants those oppressed people have power over those ones that have been the oppressors. All of these ways, these gaze of a fake social justice, as we said. However, these ideas attempt to equality and freedom debate. For this reason, in this chapter, we are going to discuss about some solution for problems that postmodernism has. So, the first solution that the author proposed is the freedom of debate. So, John Stuart Mill emphasized the importance of freedom of debate, and he said there are two harms that censorships cause to those who practice the censorships. So the first one is they can change the error for truth. For example, when the Catholic Church suppression in 17th century of the idea that the earth travel around the world rather than vice versa. And the second one is if they are wrong, they will be far away from the truth because they don't accept the correction. So, for all of these harms, the freedom of debate is so important. We can find different aspects of the truth when we understand that we are listeners and potential listeners, even if we disagree with others. This is the first solution that the author proposed to the postmodernism ideas. The second one is the respect people as individual and as members of the human race. So, postmodernism supports identity groups or collectives, as we see, where they just defend the ideas and the ideology of the groups, doesn't matter if they are grown. As a result, that excludes the perspective that a person can have as an individual. So a solution of that is keep in mind that we can think by ourselves because we are part of a group bigger than identity groups that say human rights. In that sense, we must respect the different ideas that someone may have regardless of whether we agree or not. This is the third solution that the author proposed to against the problems that have postmodernism. The third one is scientific method. In this part, a journalist, Jonathan Roach, talked about the knowledge production method, which is a system that applies two consistent rules, the skeptical rule and the empirical rule. The skeptical rule talk about that no one gets the final say. That means that you can impose your ideas over than others. And the empirical rule is related with the no one has personal authority. So it doesn't matter who are you don't have the you don't have to impose your idea, doesn't matter who you are. So take this in account, Roach proposed four principles. The fundamentalist principle that those who know the truth should decide who is right. The second one, the simple egalitarian principle, all sincere that talk about that all sincere persons believe have equal claim to respect. The third one is the radical egalitarian principle, is similar to the simple egalitarian principle, but the belief of the person in historical oppressed classes or groups gets special consideration. The fourth one is the humanitarian principle. That said, any of the above, but with the condition that the first priority be to cause not harm. So, postmodernism obviously agrees with these four principles. Nevertheless, Roach contrasts those principles with other one that is so important, that is the checking of each by each through public criticism is the only legitimate way to decide who is right. So Roach take all these principles and contrast with this bigger principle, and the postmodernism disagree with the last principle because it doesn't accept the critic. So we have to think all these principles in group, and we can't separate the principle and take as we want because that cause different ideas and the problem that has postmodernism with with the fake social justice that we talk about.
Okay, continuing some ideas that my partner mentioned before. My partner mentioned before that the science maybe is the better solution that we have for postmodernism. Postmodernism, and the postmodernism have some principles and things, and according to the authors, uh, the text calls to remember the value of reason and evidence-based approaches and science, and the author's position is to reject postmodernism principles and things and accept their criticisms uh, and move towards a more just and equitable future. And now here I have the principle of the postmodernism that the author recommend rejects, and the principles are postmodern knowledge principle and the postmodern political principle. And the postmodern knowledge principle, uh, it's a view that knowledge is a social and a cultural construction, and in summary, the text defends the importance of science and reason to obtain knowledge, but also highlights the need to listen and consider different perspectives in a fair and reasoned way. And the postmodern political principle, in this case, the authors criticize the postmodern political principle uh, because that links knowledge with power and identity, and suggests that we should evaluate arguments for their evidence and reason without identifying them with a group. And in this slide, I have the themes of the postmodernism that the authors say that we have to reject or criticize. And these themes are the blurring of boundaries, the focus on the power of language, the cultural relativism, and the loss of the individual and the universal. And the blurring of boundaries, in summary, the author suggests that we should question rigid categories, use science and reason to analyze them, and be open to the natural variability in the difference between men and women. And the other is the focus on the power of language. And while the test focuses on two main things, the importance of being skeptical of rigid categories and boundaries, and the power of language in society. And regarding the power of language, its ability to persuade and change society is highlighted, and a market of ideas is advocated in which different institutions and reasoning can be questioned and discussed. In search of an optimal solution, in summary, the test defends the importance of science, reason, and open discourse in the search for truth and social justice. And the next one is cultural relativism, And well, here the author criticizes cultural relativism and asserts that also cultural difference exists. Most traits about the work and morality transcend particular cultures. He also defends the importance of having consistent principles in the defense of human rights instead of allowing oppression the in the name of cultural respect. And the author will always that the rights of women, LGBTQ people, and racial and religious minorities must be universally respected, regardless of their culture of origin. And the last one thing of the postmodernism is the loss of the individual and the universal. And here in the text, author argues that although individualism and universalism are important in understanding the human experience, it is also important to consider how communities and social identities um, influence people live and individualism and universalism cannot fully capture the complexity of the human experience. And also, the author suggests that a more effective approach will be to recognize the importance of both individuality and universality and work to expand empathy and a sense of shared humanity. Thor argues that identity-based critical social justice approach strengthens programs made on equality of gender, race, and sexuality, and fuels identity politics of the radical right. The critical social justice approach fosters tribalization and hostility and goes against the liberal notion of not judging people based on their race, gender, or sexuality. And this may spark a resurgence of right-wing identity politics, which believe that whites should have all the power in society and that Western culture should dominate the world.
The last solution that proposed the author against the postmodernism and the fake social justice that it proposed is the secularism. Here, the author said that no matter how certain you may be that you are in possession of the truth, you have no right to impose your belief on a society as a whole. In this way, it's important to understand that secularism relegates this matter to the individual's private conscience and absolves any of the requirement to accept or pay lip service to a belief they don't share, to avoid social stigma. So, you are free to live in whatever you want, but in this same sense, you have to respect the other's idea. So, when we see all the solutions that we mentioned before, they are related to each other. So when we talk about one solution without others, maybe we can transgress the idea that we have a solution of the postmodernism and we can fall in it. So we have to keep in mind all the solutions that the author proposed and take as a whole to analyze and to maybe do a critique about the postmodernism. This is the idea that proposed the author.
Okay, as a conclusion, it's important maintaining a moderate stance and resistance to radical theories. It can be challenging in times of crisis, as revolutionary solutions seems to be the immediate answer to the